Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. Today we are talking about self-storage. My guests are Graham Hill, Scott Zucker, and James Hanrahan. And gentlemen, whether you are a seller or someone that assists people who own these properties, or you're a buyer, acquisition tips, strategies. Scott, start us kind of with the due diligence and legal side. What we should think about in acquisitions?
Well, it's interesting because as they were talking about the cap rates, we're seeing a lot of new development because the acquisition is a little harder to get. So we're seeing folks that are looking at new development as well as acquisition, and both are going to involve due diligence aspects to it. The interesting thing about the new development is the sort of barriers to entry now with new development, with zoning restrictions and permitting delays. So you're getting this balancing of how hard it is to build a facility as compared to the cost and time it takes for acquisition. But certainly on either side, the due diligence is really important. I'll tell you the key to all this, and we talk about this with our clients all the time, is if you're acquiring a property, you got to look at the leases that are there. And you may have a property that's 400 units. You're going to want to match up the leases for the tenants that are in those spaces or not in those spaces, and you just can't assume things. You don't get confirmation estoppel letters from your tenants in self-storage because, again, they're not supposed to be living there. So there's things that they have to check off their list, but a lot of government regulation is part of the problem for both development and for acquisition.
Yeah, and you're not even looking in every unit, right?
No, you can't.
No,
you can't.
You can't.
Only the vacant units. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So you don't know what they have in there or if they're really occupied, but you know if they're paying.
Right. It's about all I know.
Well, so what are some other acquisition tips, James, that you guys are doing?
Well, one thing that we love brokers, but we have to have our own model that we trust and that we understand the market. So we run our model out 4 to 7 years, looking for the IRRs that we need to get to make our investment groups happy. And if you don't have a good model, you're relying on a broker model. That's your choice. But I think most of us out there are doing our own model. And then additionally, there aren't many great projects out there that the sellers are accepting contingent financing offers. If you're putting a financing contingency in an offer, you're not going to get considered at all. Every deal we've done, the last 25 have all been no financing contingencies. If I had a financing contingencies, I wouldn't even be considered. So it's getting pretty brutal out there.
Are you doing any change in use deals?
Yeah, we're actually doing a C of O project in Florida right now, where we're converting a Kmart. That's a dark Kmart. We'll be splitting off the back portion where the Kmart is, turning it into storage. Since it has a massive parking lot, there'll be 2 out parcels with a restaurant and a coffee house and a Verizon. So we're repurposing a lot of the dark projects and older facilities, and it's a much easier way. It's a 9 to 12 month turnaround versus a 24 to 36 month if you're doing a ground up development and have to get entitlements. So we're shooting for more conversions and but possibly also working on
that is extremely interesting to look at change in use. And Graham, some people think they could find these properties on LoopNet and they can't. So how can they find properties to acquire?
Well, I think the essential thing is to find an agent, whether me or somebody like me who specializes in self-storage. I'd say 90% of the properties that I have sold are not even on the market. I mean, I find them by being in the field and talking to these people and discussing where they are in their life and what their long-term plans are. And it'll come up that, okay, this is an appropriate time to do this, but...
Is it a good time to sell?
It's a great time to sell.
And do we need a broker that speaks Australian?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for joining us here in Studio One. We appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us there on YouTube, or maybe you're on iTunes or the show website, or driving down the road listening to the radio stations around the country. Thanks for being with us. Be sure and join us next week. We're going to talk about the office market. We're going to talk about some tenant strategies, landlord strategies, investment strategies. Until next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh, and join us for the Commercial Real Estate Show. The Commercial Real Estate Show.